Hello everybody. In today's video we are taking a look at a vintage calculator that I've actually had for a few years now. This is a Canon L813 Mark II. It is a battery-powered desktop calculator made around 1982. It is a basic calculator with a couple of enhanced functions, and it has a vacuum fluorescent display, which is very nice. This calculator is technically part of Canon's Canola family. The Canola name was what Canon called all of their desktop calculators of this time, but for some reason, this is one of the only models that doesn't bear the Canola name. Even the L813 Mark I, the original model, bore the Canola name, but the Mark II doesn't. No idea why. I completely forget where I got this from. I've had it for a few years now. I'm guessing it came from a thrift store. And it's a very nice calculator. It works perfectly, like every Canon calculator I've ever had, and I've had a few. It works perfectly, and it doesn't have any age-related issues. It works great. I actually did my income taxes this year with this calculator, and it was a joy to use, as always. It takes 4 AA batteries, and you actually access them not on the bottom, but on the head of the unit. Just like that, and there you go. Runs just fine with rechargeable batteries. And if we look at the bottom, kind of neat. This was apparently property of the provincial government. And that revision date on this sticker, 10 of 82, that's the only date code I have. I believe Canon actually introduced the L813 Mark II in 1982. This is going according to datamath.org, a wonderful website that does have a page on this calculator. But Canon made this calculator until at least 1984, which probably makes it one of the last... No, I was going to say it probably makes it one of the last battery-powered calculators to have something other than an LCD display, but that's not true. Canon made some other calculators from the Canola line that were battery-powered but had a vacuum fluorescent display, I think even through the late 80s. They were kind of the last holdouts to not have an LCD display in the calculator market. Also on the bottom we have the info plate. It was made in Japan, of course, very nice. Interestingly, Canon did offer a rechargeable NiCad battery pack, which I assume just had 4 AA NiCad batteries. And it does have an AC adapter input on it for use with a Canon Model AD1 AC adapter, and I have one of those new in the box, if you can believe it. But that is a story for another calculator video. And of course it's got the BN mark that I think some sort of a Japanese alliance of office machine manufacturers used as like some sort of quality marking. I forget, I read up about it once. Here is the AC adapter input on the back. But yeah, this is a nice calculator. So in addition to the basic functions, it does have memory functionality with a combined recall and clear memory key. It's got a percentage function, which I'm not sure I know completely how to use, but I can demonstrate at least partial functionality of it. It's got a clear entry key as well as a clear key, which is nice. Other than that, just the 4 functions. It's got fixed decimal functionality, so in addition to the standard floating point setting, you can have it round to 4 decimals, 2 decimals, or no decimals at all. And at the far left of this switch is actually sort of a pseudo quasi adding machine functionality, where when you're typing in 2-digit decimal values, you know, dollar and cent values, you don't have to use the decimal key. You can just punch in the dollars and cents directly like you would on an adding machine without having to use the decimal point. It automatically implies two digits after the decimal point. And it's also got an accumulation function. When that is turned on, every time you hit the equals key, the result is added to memory. And that's about it. Like I say, it's a basic calculator. It doesn't have any truly fancy tricks up its sleeve, but it works perfectly fine. Really nice to use. This calculator is based on the Texas Instruments TMS 1045. At the time they called it a single chip microcomputer. Today we would call it a microcontroller, or even more, just a calculator chip. The TMS 1045 was used in a few different Canon models. It was also used in some Toshiba models, and some models from, kind of small unknown brands of calculators. And other siblings in the TMS 1040 family were used in many Texas Instruments models and Canons and a lot of other calculators. And kind of the interesting thing about the TMS 1045 was that it's actually capable of scientific functions. There is several scientific functions built into the chip. And it was simply up to the calculator manufacturer to decide what functions they wanted to make available. So Canon decided that they wanted, memory to be available, and percent, and the 4 basic functions, and the fixed decimal point, and the accumulator function. You get this sort of menu of functions that Texas Instruments provides in the chip already, and then the calculator manufacturer just picks and chooses what functions they want. So the same chip could have been used in this calculator and in a scientific calculator, and the chip itself is identical. They've just connected different address lines of the chip, or additional address lines to additional keys to enable those extra functions. Kind of interesting to learn about. So there's that nice vacuum fluorescent display. The keys, there isn't a key bounce issue. The keys are just, they really only need a feather light touch. There's the add to memory function, and I can recall memory. And when I press recall memory a second time in a row, it clears the memory. Subtract from memory. There's how it shows a negative. And if I create an error condition. Interestingly, so this display, I don't know if the display in this calculator originated from a different model and the enunciator was used, but instead of an E enunciator to indicate an error, it's got this left arrow, which maybe that was just Canon's way of saying overflow, because that's ultimately what error means on a calculator. It indicates overflow. So maybe that arrow just means overflow, or was this display used on like a scientific model, and this arrow means something completely different, and they just reused the display and repurposed it for an error indicator. I don't know, kind of interesting, but that's what your error indicator looks like. Demonstrating the clear entry indicator. If I do 12 times 13, but I didn't want 13, clear entry 12. There you go, that's the clear entry. I'll demonstrate the fixed decimal function if I move it to the 4 position. And I do something here. You'll see even with round numbers, it always gives you the 4 decimal places at the end, even if they're all zeros. Now I'm curious, what does it do if you have a number larger than 4 digits. So it reduces the number of decimal points once the number gets too large to display it with the desired number of decimal points. So it's smart in that fashion. Same thing with 2 decimal points. And if you try to calculate with an input with more than 4 decimal places, for example, whoops, if I do 10 times 10.000099, it does actually count that 99 even though it was more than 4 digits. So that all works. The pseudo adding machine function, I forget what the proper name for this is, if you'd call it 10 key functionality or what. But now as soon as you start typing, it adds 2 places after a decimal point. And it's fixed 2 decimals all the way. So I don't know if... Yeah, so you can override it if you manually press the decimal point. But other than that, it's just acting like you're punching in dollars and cents, and you don't have to use the decimal key. Very nice. And then the accumulator function automatically adds the result to memory. 6 times 6, 36. So now it should have. So now in the memory it should be 661, I think. Yeah. And you can clear it just like always. So unfortunately, where I don't have a manual for this thing, I don't know, at least I don't think I know entirely how the percent key is supposed to work. But I have figured out how to use it in one certain way, so I will demonstrate that. If I go into the 2 decimal position, and I want to, for example, add sales tax to something, if I buy something for $9.99 and the sales tax is 15%, times 15%, first it gives me how much tax that'll be, rounded to the 2 decimals, of course. And then I hit equals and it gives me the total after tax. So there's one way to use the percent key that I know of. So the Mark I version of the L813 and this Mark II version, cosmetically they're identical. What Canon did with the Mark II version was that the Mark I had separate recall memory and clear memory keys, and it had a sign change key. Canon combined the recall memory and clear memory into one key on the Mark II, and it got rid of the sign change key. But most oddly, the Mark I did not have add to memory or subtract from memory keys. The Mark I, it's so weird. It has the recall and clear memory, but it doesn't have add to memory or subtract from memory. So the only way to use the memory on the Mark I was with the accumulation function. Very, very strange. But that's about all there is to show of the Canon model L813 Mark II battery-powered desktop calculator from around 1982. It's a very nice calculator, as pretty much all of these old Canons are. Stood the test of time, 40 years old, still kicking. Used it for my income taxes, I enjoyed it. And yeah, it's just a very nice, basic, but very solid old calculator with a vacuum fluorescent display. And I like it very much. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. And I will see you in the next video.